Today, we're taking a closer look at the world J.D. Vance describes in Hillbilly Elegy.
Right. It's his personal story, but it also opens up this window onto the white working class,
Yeah,
especially folks with ties to Appalachia.
exactly. And think of this as, well, a way to get up to speed quickly on a pretty complex part of American life. We're aiming for those aha moments, without the heavy academic feel.
Mm-hmm. Vance mixes his own life, his own experiences, with these wider observations about society, the economy,
Yeah.
what's been happening.
So our goal here, our mission, if you like, is to pull out the key themes. What challenges, what values, what experiences does he really highlight? Trying to get a handle on things like upward mobility, poverty, the American dream,
Oh.
how it looks from that perspective.
Yeah, how it looks and maybe how it's changed for this specific community he describes.
Okay, let's dive in. That dedication really jumps out, doesn't it? For Mama and Papa, my very own hillbilly terminator.
It does. Hillbilly Terminators. It's arresting.
It is, because hillbilly, that word carries a lot of weight, often negative.
Yeah, right. It's often used as a slur, suggests backwardness. But then you slam it next to Terminators, which sounds, well, tough, resilient, almost aggressive.
Yeah, like protectors, fierce protectors.
Exactly. So right away you've got this tension. It signals we're not dealing with simple stereotypes here. It's about embracing an identity that's often looked down on, but also showing this fierce strength that comes from hardship, survival.
A complex identity, forged in struggle, like you said.
Mm-hmm. And that identity, Vance suggests, it starts forming really early.
He mentions growing up in Jackson, Kentucky, and this tradition. Everyone just stops their car for a funeral procession.
Yeah, that small detail, it says so much, doesn't it?
It really does. About community, respect.
Absolutely. A deep respect for family, for the community, even in death. It's like an unspoken rule, a shared value that binds people. It's an early lesson in belonging, Very different from maybe a more anonymous city life.
And his own family history involves that migration, the Hillbilly Highway. Grandparents moving from Kentucky up to Middletown, Ohio.
Right, chasing those factory jobs.
Yeah.
Mostly after World War II, part of that bigger movement from Appalachia to the Rust Belt.
And Middletown even got nicknamed Middletucky.
Middletucky, yeah, which
Yeah.
tells you something right there. But that move, it wasn't just changing location, it was complicated.
How so?
Well, these migrants, they often face judgment from both sides. Maybe folks back home thought they were getting too big for their britches, abandoning their roots.
Uh-huh.
And then in the North, their new neighbors often had, well, stereotypes, suspicions, different ideas about family, about how you raise kids, how you live.
So caught in the middle, really.
Yeah, that feeling of being an outsider in different ways. It highlights how tricky cultural identity can be when you move between places with really different norms.
But that identity, the Appalachian identity, it seemed to stick. The story about the Armco Steel Factory departments, unofficially named after Kentucky counties.
Isn't that striking? It just shows how powerful that cultural connection is. People need that familiarity, that sense of belonging, especially when they're in a new, maybe kind of alienating industrial place.
A way to keep their roots visible.
In a very practical way, yeah, within the factory walls.
Okay, let's shift a bit to family dynamics. Vance tells some really intense stories. He uses the term hillbilly justice. Mama's family. Uncle Pet, Uncle T-Berry.
Yeah, those stories are memorable.
Yeah.
They definitely highlight core values like loyalty, honor, especially when it comes to family.
Taking matters into their own hands seems to be a theme. Mama setting herself on fire, threatening people.
It shows this incredibly fierce protectiveness, right? A belief in swift, maybe informal justice. You protect your own, you settle things directly. It's extreme, perhaps, but it underlines that deep family bond.
And there were clear lines you didn't cross, like insulting someone's mother.
Oh, absolutely. That was like the ultimate offense, the direct attack on the family. The fights he describes over mother jokes. It shows how central and respected mothers were, or at least the idea of motherhood was.
But alongside this fierce loyalty, he also describes a lot of chaos. Arguments, instability, even violence, but often hidden, trying to keep their two lives separate.
Mm-hmm. That separation.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a coping mechanism, a form of self-preservation.
How do you mean?
Well, maybe within a close community, some level of drama or turmoil was understood, even expected. But showing that to the outside world, that could bring judgment, shame, maybe even get authorities involved. So keeping up appearances was a way to protect the family.
Right. And amidst that chaos, the grandparents, Mama and Papa, they emerge as these pillars for Vance.
Hugely important. Their influence is just undeniable in his telling. In a world that often felt unpredictable, they offered stability, support, a kind of moral compass, even if unconventional at times.
They really stepped up.
They did. Which highlights how crucial extended family, especially grandparents, can be as that safety net in working-class communities when parents are struggling.
It's quite a contrast, though. These really strong family bonds existing right alongside serious community issues like addiction, instability.
It's a complex reality, isn't it? Those strong ties can be what gets people through emotionally, practically, especially when maybe there aren't many external support systems available or trusted. Families rely intensely on each other.
Let's talk about the economic side. Vance gives a really clear picture of Middletown's decline as manufacturing faded.
Yeah, the Rust Belt story. It wasn't just about losing jobs, though that was huge. It was also about losing a sense of identity, a community structure that was built around those industries.
And he mentions rising residential segregation, too.
Right, which tends to concentrate poverty, limits access to good schools, opportunities. It creates these cycles that are hard to break.
He points out this paradox, too. Seeing jobs available like at that tile warehouse where he worked. Decent pay, benefits. But the employer couldn't find reliable workers.
Yeah, that's a really provocative part of the book. He describes people just not showing up or quitting easily.
What does he suggest is behind that?
Well, he touches on a few things. Maybe a lack of agency, a feeling that individual effort doesn't really pay off in the long run, a tendency to blame external factors. He gives the example of Bob, who had a good chance but seemed to sabotage it.
So maybe a kind of disillusionment.
Possibly a disconnect between effort and reward, or maybe the psychological toll of long-term economic stress impacting motivation, work ethic. It's complicated.
It definitely clashes with that traditional American dream idea. Work hard, get ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The rhetoric is still there, maybe, but the lived reality for many feels different. When you don't see people around you getting ahead through hard work in those kinds of jobs, it can breed cynicism.
And education. Vance notes parents wanted better for their kids, saw education as the way out.
Definitely. There was this aspiration for the next generation to achieve more.
Oh, a lack of practical knowledge about how to actually make that happen.
That seems to be the gap he identifies. Wanting it is one thing, but knowing how to navigate the system, college applications, financial aid, even just understanding what different careers involve, that the specific knowledge wasn't always there.
And the view of blue-collar work itself seemed to change. Papa's job at Armco was respectable, a career. Later, it's seen more as something to escape.
That reflects a bigger shift in society, I think. A devaluing of manual labor in manufacturing jobs compared to white-collar professions. For communities built on that work, it's a blow to local pride. Makes the future feel less certain.
Education really becomes central for Vance, personally. He talks about realizing how much he didn't know compared to other kids. The multiplication example.
Yeah, that moment of seeing the academic gap. It highlights those disparities in preparation that often exist between different socioeconomic backgrounds. Not about ability, necessarily, but about exposure, resources, what's expected.
Luckily, he had people who pushed him, Mama, obviously, and teachers like Mr. Selby.
Crucial figures.
Yeah.
Mentors, that support, that belief from key people. It can make all the difference. It's about encouragement, but also what some people call social capital.
Social capital. Like the networks, knowing people who can help.
Exactly. Knowing how things work. Having someone guide you through unfamiliar territory, like college or professional life. Those connections open doors.
Vance is also pretty direct about social problems. He talks about seeing welfare queens, but they were white in his community.
That's a really important point he makes. It directly confronts those racialized stereotypes about poverty and welfare. It shows that economic hardship, reliance on the safety net, it cuts across racial lines, especially in struggling areas.
And substance abuse. Its impact is devastating in the book, particularly with his mother's struggles.
He's very open about that. It's portrayed as this powerful force driving instability trauma. He uses that phrase, chaos begets chaos. It creates these cycles that are just incredibly hard to escape.
All this contributes to that feeling of being an outsider, doesn't it? Whether looking back at Appalachia after leaving, or feeling out of place in environments like Yale.
That's a recurring theme for people who experience upward mobility, moving between classes.
Yeah.
That sense of code switching, maybe?
Yeah.
Not quite fitting in anywhere completely. It can be alienating, navigating those different cultural expectations.
But ultimately, his own journey is one of, well, overcoming a lot. Mom's support, the Marines providing structure.
Yes, his personal story is central. It highlights the role of that core support system, how discipline learned in the military helped him, but also the ongoing struggle to understand his identity, navigate those class differences he encountered later.
He talks about realizing the impact of adverse childhood experiences, ACEs.
Right, recognizing how those early traumas shaped him and consciously trying to build a different kind of future while still acknowledging where he came from.
So if we were to sum up the key takeaways from this deep dive into Hillbilly Elegy, what really stands out?
I think it's the complexity. You see these incredibly strong, almost fierce community and family loyalties existing right alongside deep economic hardship and social problems. It's about enduring cultural values, but also the real struggle when the economic foundations shift under your feet. The American dream feels distant, or at least different, in his telling.
And hopefully for you listening, this discussion has offered some real insights into that experience, into this particular slice of America.
Yeah, and it's crucial, I think, to remember this is one story, Vance's perspective. It's powerful, it's insightful, but we shouldn't overgeneralize. Experiences within that community, like any community, are diverse.
Absolutely. It's one lens, a very personal one. Okay, a final thought to leave you with then. After exploring Vance's account of these struggles and triumphs, what do you think are the biggest barriers to opportunity in America today? And maybe how much can individual resilience, individual agency actually achieve against those barriers?
That's a big question, something worth mulling over.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.